With that, thank you very much, gentlemen. Floor is all yours.
All right. Can we agree on the question of the underlying base of reality? I don't
What
think
is
you
that?
would have
What do you mean? What's the underlying base of reality?
that. You and me right now, two humans, you're in your house, sitting in front of, and this is actually what's going on.
Yeah, I agree that what's happening
Okay.
right now is what's happening right now.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry,
So-
James. I'm sorry to interrupt, Max. Is there a cross-examination or not? Or is it just open? I don't.
Only open dialogue. If you guys wanted to do something like that, we could. It's spontaneous.
Oh, I sort of missed that. I'm sorry. I must have not read the thing. I kind of assumed there's that section of cross-examination. That's fine. We can, Max, do you agree? We can just do a cross-examination questions back and forth.
No
That's
problem.
fine. That's fine. Yeah, we can do that.
You guys want, let's say 10 minutes each?
10?
And then...
Sure, yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Let's do it.
So that this would be my examination, my time to ask questions, right?
That's right. Yes. Interrogate them hard.
So I kind of called in my opening that when you're judging secular humanism based on your paradigm of the duties and that kind of stuff, you are judging secular humanism based on your paradigm. It's an external critique, not an internal one. How can you deal with that?
I would disagree. I think my premised argument actually descriptively tells us that society, being that it has order in the definition, I'm actually arguing, I'm critiquing what a society requires, not just what a Christian or secular society requires. I'm actually making the argument that
hold on, because you're making the argument that because of these arbitrary things that I consider my paradigm to be important, you're judging secular humanism based on those and not of finding a problem with secularism itself.
I disagree. I think that the problem that I'm pointing out with secular humanism, which would be a problem in my Pine Creek hypothetical, would be if a secular humanist took on and adopted the Christian ethical paradigm without any of the beliefs of Christianity, a belief in God, he's still a secularist. How can you, Max, argue against another secularist who just happens to prefer a Christian ethical paradigm?
We go by the argument. Because you see to think that we're not even qualified to even sit at the table and we have no basis to make any moral prescriptions with. You are factually incorrect on that. Because we do have, that's what I was pointing towards, the presuppositionalism, that
I don't know how
presuppositionalism.
I'll give you a chance to finish, Max, but I don't know how strict you guys want to be in terms of that 10 minutes being devoted for cross exams. If you, Max, want to ask another question after this, I was under the impression that Max would be, but I know that Jim Bob also asked you a question in return, Max. So, but just
it's okay, it's all good. So we're flowing. No biggie. Lost my train of thought.
You said you have a moral. You can make moral positions.
We can make, because the arguments for why we consider things to be immoral are there. The problem is that we never get to that specific part of the conversation because we're always stuck in my presuppositions reject you even have an opinion on this topic. How would you deal with that?
I didn't say that. I said that if, again, Max, if I just presented a hypothetical where two secularists disagree on the obligations, I'm asking under your own view without Christianity being in the mix at all. There's no one presupping you right now. There's Pine Creek who wants to adopt a Christian ethical system without any of the beliefs. I'm asking from a secularist position, how can the secularist argue against a fellow secularist if the fellow secularist adopts a Christian ethical system?
On the merit of the argument. So, for example, let's take those two guys want to talk about abortion. And one would make their case for being anti-abortion and one would make their case for being pro-abortion.
Well, no, the argument from the secularist that you're debating against would just simply be, I prefer Christian ethics. It's a preference. There's no argument.
that it's not a preference.
You're
being dismissive.
What is it? What is
you're
it then?
being dismissive of the it is a whole argument as to why someone would consider abortions as morally permissive.
Max,
it's not just a preference.
Max, listen. if Pine Creek stands in front of you and says, I want society organized according to my preferences, and my preferences happen to align with Christian ethics. That's his statement. I'm asking you, how do you argue against that?
That's what I'm telling you, that you keep getting stuck on point zero. You have to grant me my worldview. This idea that I cannot make a moral prescription because I don't have any basis and whatever. It's just a diversion away from the conversation.
So it sounds like you're not willing to engage with the hypothetical. If Pine Creek
No, I
says,
am willing to engage. I'm
okay,
just rejecting the
let me ask it a
premise.
different way. Is Pine Creek still a secularist if he adopts Christian ethical systems?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So if he's still a secularist, you as a secularist can't tell him he's being a bad or inconsistent secularist. That means
that is meaningless.
No, it doesn't mean anything. It means, what it means is that a bunch of secularists, Max, could adopt the Christian ethical system.
Sure. Yeah. So
Okay.
it doesn't mean it's superior. It doesn't. This is taking us nowhere.
Okay. So how do you determine the Christian ethical system wouldn't be superior if, under your own view, Christian ethics would be permitted under Christian or under secularism?
Because you have to face the arguments on the merit of the argument itself. You have to have the conversation.
Okay.
You can just a priori say, I accept all of this.
Okay. So let's do the argument then. Pretend I'm a secularist and I say, hey, Max, do you agree with premise one that society depends on order to maintain itself, a function effectively to flourish?
No, it's way more nuanced than that.
Wait, you disagree with the premise one that society depends on order to maintain itself, to function effectively, and to flourish?
It's more nuanced than that.
I didn't ask if it's nuanced.
It's reductionist, so I wouldn't accept.
So you're just not gonna. So you're not gonna engage. So what is? So you tell me from your view, what is dependent on something like, because in the definition, do you agree with the definition of society being an aggregate of people living together in a more or less ordered community?
Sure.
Okay, so if you agree with the definition of society, then premise one is society, being that it's defined by a set of orders. Do you agree that society depends on order, being that it's definitionally true?
Sure.
Okay, so you do agree with premise one. Okay, do you agree with premise two that a sustained order society does require a set of duties and obligations? That is to say,
no, I reject that.
Okay, so if you can present me a vision of a society that doesn't require a set of duties and obligations, can you tell me what that looks like?
Well, where do these duties even come from?
That's not what I asked. I asked you, can you give me an example?
That's the problem. Why?
No, this is a dodge. So if you're arguing premise two is false, that a sustained ordered society doesn't require duties. For instance, you believe in human rights?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe humans should acknowledge and abide by the law that's derived or informed by human rights?
Sure.
Do humans have an obligation to acknowledge human rights?
Let's go with yes, sure.
Okay, so you agree that a sustained order society, according to your vision, does require a set of duties and obligations.
But where are the where are the duties? Like,
nowhere in secularism. That's for sure. So that's what I'm getting to. If there's you answered my question properly.
That's what you keep on asserting.
Where are they? You said it. Where are they? Like,
where's
Waldo? Where's Waldo?
You already accepted that through subjectivity, we can arrive at data.
I didn't agree with any of those statements.
Well, you did agree that we have an underlying.
No, the question of whether or not we have a duty to achieve or apprehend accurate interpretation of data is the different question of whether we're capable of it. Do you understand that?
That wasn't my question.
Okay. Do you understand that there's a difference between the ability to acquire data and the assumed moral obligation to come to true conclusions about data are two different questions?
But I wasn't talking about that.
Well, we're talking about better societies, right?
Yes.
So a better society is an evaluation of data, right?
Right, but
okay.
You're not trying to get let me get what I want to say out.
Okay.
So through the acknowledgement that our intersubjective experience can lead to objective results. So we can both measure through our own subjective lens that water boils at 100 degrees at sea level, right?
Yes.
So we can arrive at objective facts about the world.
That's right.
With that in mind, what we can also do is arrive through intersubjective dialogue at what we societally consider moral prescriptions.
Oh, just arbitrarily?
Not arbitrarily.
What do you mean?
Why are you sneaking arbitrarily?
Hold on. Did you just say that a bunch of people can get together and agree on outcomes they deem as morally good, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's arbitrary. So if Stalin determined outcomes and he got a bunch of people to agree with it, is that your model of ethics?
That is a very sneaky example, because
that's a sneaky dodge. I asked you a direct question. Notice how your direct questions I'll answer.
It doesn't because I can't answer the question.
Max, let me answer.
I can't answer the question because it has a lot of baked assumptions into it.
Wait a second.
Because you're being super
sec, gentlemen, I hate to do this. Hold on, one second.
Dishonest.
Hold on, gentlemen. Is just to take a deep breath. Is everybody wants to hear each of your guys' ideas, and once we have you guys speaking over each other, they won't be able to. So I just want to reset. I want to, Max, if for the sake of argument, if you can explain to James very in a pithy way, or I'm sorry, Jim Bob in a pithy way. We're both James in a way. So if you could explain, you won't answer the question. Is that what you're saying? Like, is there a way in which you could humor his question?
Right, because I have to reject the terms because it has a lot of baked assumptions. When he
talked
about Stalin, he didn't tell me if he got all those people to agree with him by force, or was it just that they got convinced?
Okay, let me help.
Very important.
Oh, convinced is different, right? So are they the victims of being convinced?
That's not like people can change their mind. That's a good thing. If you give people evidence.
Okay, hold on a second.
Hold on a second. And convince them of a position. Why is that bad?
Hold on a second. If Stalin or Mao or anyone else, the French revolutionaries, convinced everybody that they should use force to annihilate a group of people, right? If they arrive at that conclusion based on the data, right?
Again.
What do you mean again?
Example.
What is sneaky? It's literally word for word what you're saying. Is it not the? Yeah, hold on, Max.
No, you're trying to make it a gotcha.
Hold on,
thing.
just
unbelievable.
Just give me a second.
I'll let you
Max,
finish.
I'm still, for crying out loud, Max. When I'm trying to jump into officiate and you still keep talking, Max, it drives me nuts. I want to let Jim Bob finish his question. Go ahead. And Max, I need you to hold, just sit on your hands for 30 seconds at least.
Okay. Max said a group of people can, like boiling water, look at the data and arrive at moral prescriptions based on agreement of the data. If it's true, what follows from that is that a group of people can look at the data and come to moral prescriptions they agree with that says, do away with all the farmers and all these other people, right? Mao Zedong, Stalin. For me to bring up Stalin as an example of something that's consistent with groups of people coming to conclusions about data, pure data, and coming to value judgments, moral value judgments of what they ought to do. Your system doesn't tell me why any of that's inconsistent with secularism. They are secularist, right? Like Stalin was a secularist?
Well, he was more of a communist.
Is that secular?
It's secular, but it's not secular humanism.
Well, here's the thing. If you're going to go with secular humanism versus secularism, that's fine. But the thing is, if secular humanism is a form of secularism anyway, right? Your variation of secular humanism is still under the umbrella of secularism. And if Mao and Joseph Stalin are secularists, and they use your own
communists.
Communist is
and they ended up devolving into authoritarianism.
Dude, you're interrupting. No, you're interrupting. You're assuming authoritarianism is bad under a secular view. Yeah, why?
Because it undermines all of the principles that I gave you that I consider valuable about secular humanism.
Yeah, but can't a secularist still deny to have a godless view and come to contradictory value judgments than you?
No.
No,
How?
you're the true secularist. Okay,
no.
so no, you
I'm
agreed.
not saying that. You're being very
No.
disingenuous.
Oh my gosh,
right
dude,
now.
are you serious? You just
Yes,
agreed.
I'm serious.
You just agreed in the Pine Creek hypothetical that if Pine Creek comes to Christian ethics as a preference for prescribing law and informing
I
society.
reject the
Hold on, dude.
preference
Stop
characterization.
interrupting. I don't care if you reject it. You admitted that when I asked, is Pine Creek still a secularist, even if he adopts these views you disagree with? You said yes.
Because all of this is meaningless. It's not part of this is just you trying to dodge the debate.
Talk about a projection. Dodge the debate.
Sure.
This is the foundation of the debate. Look, it's a simple debate from my view. We're talking about whether or not secular ethics is better for society. But I just presented a hypothetical where two secularists could have completely counterintuitive positions on how to run society. Yes?
How could that happen?
I just told you, Pine Creek Doug can adopt a Christian ethical system, which you don't agree with. You're interrupting. You asked me a question and you're interrupting me.
Hold on. To be fair, Max, you did ask him how. So let's let Jim Bob finish exactly how.
The question is, how is it possible for two secularists to arrive at counterintuitive, contradictory positions on how to run a society? I just told you. A secularist, the Pine Creek Doug experiment, can adopt a Christian ethical system and all of the norms and customs and informed policy that come with it, and hold a view that he still doesn't believe in God, but he prefers the Christian ethical system. I asked you, from a secular position, how do you argue that he's not a secularist? You said you can't. He is a secularist. I just don't agree with his prescriptives. I'm saying from the secular position, I don't even need to be here to defeat secularism, because you guys can't even come to some sort of normative authority. Why? Like I put in my opening, you guys have
why again?
Because I'll tell you why. No, let me finish.
No,
let me finish. Don't interrupt me.
How long?
No, how long?
One
the
sec.
reason
Okay.
you can't.
Can you, Jim Bob? Can you let me know? Am I summarizing accurately? And if you want to correct me, you obviously can. But Max, I think he's saying that if you have like two secular humanists who are like completely like seem to be at their core in disagreement, and they're still saying they're secular humanists. One of them is like the conventional secular humanist who rejects Christianity, and the other one is like Pine Creek, who's like, well, I'm a secular humanist, but Christian ethics are pretty practical. They work pretty well, so I suggest we use them. I think made by Jim Bob saying like there's a serious problem with secular humanism if you can have those both exist. Because I think earlier you said, Max, that you think it's possible that you could have a secularist like Pine Creek, who's a secular humanist, and like I said, is arguing for
and
Christian
it's
ethics.
A conservative and still would have abortion be illegal. Yes, that can exist. But how do you deal with those? And you have to go to the merits of the argument. But Jim Bob rejects that I can have an argument about morality that has merit, and that's where we're getting stuck.
I never said anything. I never said a damn thing about you making a moral judgment at all. I pointed to the premises of my argument, which you're not engaging with, which is society depends on order to maintain itself. If you want a flourishing society, you need order. If you want order, you're going to have to lay out a set of basically duties and obligations for the populace to follow. In your case, it's like human rights and all these things, right? Well, what I'm pointing to is that a secularist lacks a normative system of moral duties and obligations. In other words, if a secular humanist rejects all of the diversity and inclusivity and the LGBT stuff and the trans stuff, all of these things, right? There are secularists who completely go against all of these things. So if they go against it, you, Max, can't represent the secular humanist position and say you're not being a good secularist. They're actually being completely consistent with secular humanism. Why? Because secular humanism doesn't have a set of moral duties and obligations.
Okay, here we go again, repeating yourself again. I don't know how much more clear I can make this. You're judging secular humanism based on your arbitrary preference that what your paradigm says is the proper measuring tool.
No, I'm judging it based on both of our agreed premises that an order society requires duties and obligations.
Right, but hold on. If we
I didn't say which ones.
If we have this guy, and this guy does not support, DEI, and is not okay with gay marriage, then the more of those you have, the less secularist that person is actually, because they don't care about
Based
their
on
fellow
what?
humans.
Nope. Based on what?
On the intersubjective agreement that we have as a society. You can call it social contract. There's many ways in which we justify.
So the agreement can change then. The agreement,
yes.
Max,
and
is
that's
it
a feature, not a bug.
Hold on. If the agreement about secular humanism can change week to week, day to day, hour to hour, from supporting DEI to not, are they still secular?
Why would they change that? Because
I didn't ask.
That would mean going back.
Dude, I didn't ask
the
why.
The problem is with the hypotheticals is that they have to match what we're talking about. So you're just telling me
dodging.
If a position does a full 180 and one day they stop believing in that people have value, then
Max,
why is that even important?
Max, you dodged the hypothetical and now you're crying
that
hypotheticals shouldn't matter.
The framing,
no,
dude.
Do hypotheticals test your logical consistency?
Yes.
Okay, let me test your logical consistency. If you just said currently the secular humanist view adopts and encourages DEI and all the rest, I asked you a question. If it's arrived at by pure agreement, can the agreement change tomorrow, hypothetically?
There's so many baked assumptions. I reject the question because
you reject the question. Wow, you're a sophist,
it's not.
Dude.
Max,
it's not that.
Are you sure? Like, why can't it just? I don't understand what assumption is built into.
They have
what's the assumption?
Undertones.
Name the assumption.
Name the assumption. So, for example, it's not arbitrary. It's not just because we feel like it. There's a deeper conversation, but we can't get past the point. Like, you can justify it through pragmatism. You can justify moral description through egoism, through empathy, through their societal cohesion, social contract. There's so many ways. And you can take your pick and choose.
What was the assumption?
How we
I don't understand what was built in though. Like I
don't.
I know
the choices that are made under secularism are arbitrary. That's what he's trying to say.
Aren't agreements
to get past that?
Aren't agreements arbitrary?
Yes, but they have an underlying argument behind them.
Wait a second. If agreements are arbitrary, why does it require an underlying argument if you can just arbitrarily agree on things? Why do you need an argument? You're the one baking in the assumption you need an argument for arbitrary decisions. You don't.
No, it's not.
Do you need an argument for an arbitrary decision?
It's not arbitrary. That's what I'm rejecting.
Look, if an agreement, you say in premise 1, are agreements arbitrary, you say yes. In premise 2, you say agreements aren't arbitrary. You have to choose.
Okay, you're being disingenuous again.
What?
When we make a moral prescription on abortion, for example, it's not arbitrary. There is an argument behind it. Why do we allow abortion? Right? So, and there's a full development of the argument. Would you like to discuss that?
No, because if your system, right? If someone just says, I don't prefer those, the secularist view, including yours, you're making an assumption right now under your own secular view that people ought produce arguments in order to use their preferences to inform policy. Well, no, that's a baked assumption. It's not actually true that you need an argument to inform policy. You could actually just use force. You can use population. You can use majority rule. You can basically procreate and make as many people as you want, and you train them to think the way you do, and you have them vote on policies that inform policy, or vote on policies, right? And you don't need an argument. Do you need an argument to vote?
No, you don't need an argument to vote. But in order to make a valid moral prescription, it has to have some kind of supporting argument. There has to be a reason why. Otherwise, you're just tic-tac-toeing through life. And that's not what secular humanism is.
That's great. That's great.
That's
great. Let's use your own reasoning on yourself. Why ought secular humanists abide by the currently agreed on page of Secular Humanist Manifesto up to 15 bullet points or whatever? Let's say 15. Yeah, 15 bullet points. Why, Max, ought the secular humanist who disagrees with the Humanist Manifesto, this arbitrary agreement, keep and abide by the
I
secular.
reject the arbitrary characterization
Dude,
again, and you're going to continue doing it.
Look, Max, I'll prove that's arbitrary. Is it possible for the secular, let's say the American Humanist Association, Good Without God is their subtitle here. Is it possible, practically, logically, hypothetically, for the American Humanist Association to change their 15 bullet points?
Yes.
Really?
But that's not a bug. It's a feature.
No. Now, on the basis they can change these, doesn't it follow that they can arbitrarily change it? It wouldn't be a contradiction? No, it wouldn't be arbitrary. What do you mean?
Because, for example, all of the changes that you propose, let's say one day they go against DEI, or they go back to racism is good, and that kind of stuff. That stuff will go directly against. So even if you do that, then
it goes against
starting to be out of the fold.
Wait a second. I asked you, is it possible logically, practically, that the American Humanist Association, who has the 15 bullet points, to change their views? And you say, no, that would go against the views, right? Hold on.
You're misquoting me now.
Hold on.
I will clarify. No, you quoted me incorrectly. That's not what I said.
Okay, what did you say then?
That they can change, yes. But what cannot happen is that we go back, that we go to loose rights, to less liberties, to less freedom. You're trying to make it sound like they could go all the way back, do 180 degrees and say the exact opposite.
Is it possible?
Cannot happen.
Why not?
It is logically possible, but they will go against it is. But being logically possible is just an appeal to possibility. It doesn't mean that it's either going to happen.
We didn't ask. I didn't ask if it's going to. I asked you if it's logically possible to happen. Then there's nothing objective.
Yeah, but
keeping
a unicorn is logically possible too.
Dude, if it's the case that it's look, we'll ask a more brutal way of asking this. The first is religious humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. Let's say the American Humanist Association decides that through the data, your own empirical analysis, if you came to the conclusion that it was better for society on net balance after many years of trying, it was better for society to adopt a Christian ethical system even without the belief in God. Isn't it possible for the American Humanist Association to include adopting the Christian ethical system without the belief in God?
Why does that matter?
Unbelievable.
Why does that matter?
You've seen it here first, folks.
Why? It's like, okay, what if you don't do your position, but then rather do my position and answer to me that instead? It's like, no, I don't have to do
You don't have to answer. So is it logically is it a contradiction for the American Humanist Association to add in a bullet point that says adopting a Christian ethical system without the belief in God is still a secular bullet point?
How would that even come about?
I didn't ask
do you have
how.
A Christian,
Unbelievable.
How do you have a Christian? Why is this relevant? This is a stupid question. I want to. He keeps on asking the same question that I don't want to go down this route.
Because it's the end. Because it's the end of your system.
But you,
no, it's
but
not.
You asked,
yeah, it is.
But you asked, how does it come about? I think that Jim Bob's not trying to make the case that it is going to come about. He's trying to use it as an example of getting at like your underlying logical reasoning. Like, it's not about whether or not it's going to happen. It's about, he's trying to see kind of the underlying
let's reduce the argument.
Inconsistency potentially.
What he's saying is, what about you don't argue for your thing? What about if in the place of your thing we put my thing and we call it that and we
No, you can't. No, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work. Why? Because that's why Christian ethics.
That's exactly what you're saying.
I'm telling you, we can do that to you and it actually works as an argument. You can't do it to us. It doesn't work. Why? Because we have set moral duties and obligations. So if we have set moral duties and obligations, we can, like in my opener, Max, I can go to another Christian who proclaims to be Christian, and I can say, you're not fulfilling on your moral duties and obligations, dude.
And we can do that too.
No,
you claim we can.
No, you can't.
We can, yes.
Okay, watch. I'll demonstrate how you can't. If Pine Creek Doug adopts a Christian ethical position without the belief in God, he's still secular. You tell me he's against all the DEI stuff, right? How do you, as a secular humanist, approach him and tell him he's not a real secularist?
Well, he's going against the flourishing of a group of people that's inherently immoral, so he's no longer within the fold of a secular humanist.
Oh, really?
But we said that before.
Really?
I don't want to get stuck on this one.
Okay.
You think you have one point.
It's
You
the only point
don't.
needed.
I already answered, and we need to move away. We need to have the actual conversation. Why, for example, why would we say that abortion is morally permissible? Why would we say that
because you don't have,
necrophilia is not morally permissive?
You would say that abortion is morally permissible because you have no duty or obligation to procreate.
No, you attempted to give my argument.
Okay, let me ask you.
You failed.
Okay, cool, Max. Just saying I failed isn't an argument. But Max, does secular humanism have a duty and a moral obligation to procreate?
No.
No.
Why? Why should it?
Okay. Do you value flourishing society?
Yes.
Is a flourishing society possible without procreation?
Ultimately, no, but there are quite a few levels of that.
Oh, wait a second.
You can incentivize. You can incentivize reproduction while at the same time making sure that people who do not want to take that route are still able to live their lives.
Okay, great. So under the secular humanist manifesto and your system, what's better for society? You actually have a system that could very well, without the use of coercion and force, could very well have the society that you're calling better could actually die out in several non-existent generations, right?
In how many?
I don't know.
This is a ridiculous argument.
Really?
I actually preempted that because, again, why do you care about the amount of people being born when right now,
we're under
in the U.S., who is mostly Christian, you have homeless people.
That's a total red herring. Actually, does look,
Gotcha.
Max.
That's enough handwave dismissal. It was so late.
Oh, nice try. Nice try. No. Max, does secular humanism have a moral obligation to help the homeless?
Yes.
Where?
Because we consider humans' life inherently valuable.
Nope. Well, you don't.
Because of our shared intersubjective experience. So yes.
Well, hold on a second. Where in the secular humanist manifesto is it an obligation that you ought and have to help the homeless, or else you're not a secular humanist?
No, that's I reject the framing of that.
Okay.
I love how every question has like.
Well, no. You're doing meta. I'm just asking you a simple question. Is it possible for a group of secular humanists to be secular humanists and not help any homeless people?
Yes.
Okay. So if it's not a requirement, hold on. If it's not a requirement, it's not a moral obligation. Done.
Here we have
a meta analysis of what I just said.
I'm sorry, are you just going to keep like pumping yourself up while I'm speaking?
Go ahead.
So here we have a typical thing of the thing that I talked about, the nuance. They can't discuss any of the nuance of the conversation. So would we encourage people to help the less fortunate? Sure. Would we compel and force people to help other people? No.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Well, no one said anything about force. We're asking under your ethical system, which is the debate, under your ethical system, which is about normative claims, you don't have an ought that you ought help the homeless.
Yes.
The Christian does. The Christian does.
You should help the homeless.
Okay, cool.
It's not mandatory.
If there is
it's not going to be enforced by force.
Okay, cool. So, Max, if a homeless person has the choice between going to a Christian society whose obligation is to help them and goes to a secular goes to a secular society who has no obligation, and that's the only thing they know, whether or not the society they're choosing, one has an obligation morally to help them and one doesn't. Which society is better for the homeless?
I would still say secular.
Yeah, you would. Yeah. Why would you say that?
Because in general, the charity that religious people go comes with baggage. So they force you to listen to a sermon, maybe come to church on Sunday.
Oh, and that would be bad?
I would not get, yeah, that would be
Why
bad.
is that
That would
bad?
be bribing.
Why was that? Wait, hold on. So your reasoning is the homeless person should go to the secular society, even though the secular society has no obligation to help them. But the Christian society does have an obligation, and you're saying the homeless shouldn't be helped because they might get to know the theology.
Yes.
Wow. So you're the guy who's for humans flourishing and being helped.
Correct. Yes. But
That's funny.
the thing
That's
is
funny.
that I actually see as very immoral that when someone is in need of a loaf of bread and a glass of water, you come and you tell, hey, here, join my little club. We'll give you food. That is bribery, and I see that as immoral.
Well, you're assuming that that's the thing that's happening. What if that wasn't happening and they still helped them?
If that didn't happen, then okay, I do support people helping each other.
Great. So if it was a Christian society where they helped the poor and didn't do a bait and switch with the food, but they had every intention for the person to know their theology, and you had a secular society that had no moral obligation, which society should the homeless go to in that instance?
Wait, how are they not giving the sermon as a part of the trade? Is it
what? There's not a trade. I just told you the church goes out and helps the homeless. If there's a society where the church goes out and helps the homeless, and the homeless person knew that that society has an obligation to help the homeless, right? By the way, Max, guess what? In a society that's Christian, it's not just the church that helps the homeless, right? Can you be a Christian and help the homeless without being a sort of an authoritative position in the church?
Sure.
Okay.
So can you if you're a secularist?
Well, no, the secularist has no obligation. We're talking about obligations.
It doesn't
and duties.
matter, but can they help by themselves? Sure.
Okay.
There's tons of people who are
all right, cool.
for themselves.
So I think we've established that even Max, in these hypotheticals where there's a clear distinction between a society that helps the homeless, I remove the caveat that they needed to convert in order to eat bread, because that's obviously occurs in some places, but that's not what I'm referring to. He still would choose the secularist and not the Christian. Now I have another question.
Yes.
What do you think children are an important aspect of society?
Yes.
Okay, why?
Because they become the adults of the future.
That's right. And so do you believe it's important in judging what's better for society to judge what you teach your children?
Sure.
Okay, do you think it's a good thing to teach kids about homosexual activity as an option for sexual intercourse?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why is that a good thing?
Because they might be gay, so they might have doubts about that.
Okay, so someone might also like children and be attracted to children. So you teach them how to interact with children because they might be PDF?
No,
that's different.
We
right,
consider
right. Oh, okay.
We consider that to be immoral.
Okay, why?
Because it produces harm to the child.
Okay.
And we have agreed
okay.
that we make a distinction between people who are underage and people who are adults.
Oh, okay.
And
you make a distinction.
We have made a moral prescription that it is not morally permissible for an adult to engage with a minor.
Right, but you can stop a minor from reaching puberty.
What is that? What aboutism?
Are you okay? What? Are you okay with stalling a child's development because they think they're in the wrong body?
Yeah.
You are okay with that. And yet, on the same principle that they're not old enough to consent, you're okay with violating the consent of the child to stop their development, right? But you're totally not okay with stopping. Okay, so under your view, it's okay to violate the
argument.
Hold on. It's okay under your view to violate the child's.
I reject that it violates a child. It actually
really
goes with the consent of the child, because when
childs can consent now. You heard it here. Max just said child can consent.
When that happens,
child's consent. Did you say?
You're not smart enough to get a gotcha like this on
you just said children can consent.
Chill down. Yes,
it's quick,
again.
bro.
nuance seems to be lost on Jim Bob. So yes, because this is a medical decision in which the wishes of the child, the parents, and the doctor are it's not an individual choice. It's
So
not
the child consents.
the child, the parent, and the doctor.
So
It's a medical
children
decision.
can children consent?
Do children consent to have their appendix taken out?
No, but the question is, do children are you okay with children consenting to, you think children can consent?
In this way, in this very nuanced and very specific way, yes, the same way that a child consents to having their appendix taken out.
So should children be able to get tattoos then?
With the consent of their parents, yes. I got this when I was 14.
Okay. So if a 3-year-old wants a tattoo and I believe him, I can tattoo my son?
Sure.
Great work. So if children are important to society.
I love how you think it's like, oh, great work, I got him, guys, I got him.
No, now I got you.
This is just like stupid questions.
Okay, I understand.
So I'm just saying yes, so we can move on and talk about the actual stuff.
Okay, cool. The actual stuff is also.
Do you think it's a serious question to ask? Can I tattoo my 3-year-old?
Yeah. So
okay.
Is it also important what we teach children about their ontology and their status in the world? Like what the world is? Okay. So if there's two options, and one option is teaching children that they were made with intent, they were made to be loved, they were made with duties and obligations, they were made with purpose, they were made with higher purpose, teleology, and that they're responsible for their actions, right? That they're growing into a world of responsibility. If you teach them that they were created in love by God, is that a worse thing to teach children than their own? Wait, I didn't finish. Then is it worse than? Hold on, dude. Is it worse? Is it worse than teaching them that there's no purpose, no value in the world, and no ultimate meaning? Which is worse?
I reject all of the terms of your question. It's a stupid question.
That's like the 15th rejected question.
Yes.
Let's say that just for the sake of argument, Max.
Questions. I will go ahead and detail why I reject the question.
Good, but can you, for the sake of argument, let's say that if you're like, let's say you were like, I don't think that I am doing what you're suggesting in the question, and qualifying, like, would you answer his question? Like, let's say there was some sick person out there, like Iron Horse from the live chat, who was like, yeah, I am, where we knew he was teaching his children that like life is meaningless. Like, would you be okay with it?
No, but the problem is that makes, if I accept the terms of that question, that would imply that the exact opposite is what we teach people in a secular society. And no, yes, true. Life doesn't have a higher purpose.
What if you
we teach people that they're valuable. We teach people that they can make their purpose, that they can choose their own path in life, and that they're responsible for their actions.
Okay, great.
We can teach them the difference between good and bad, and what is morality, and why it is wrong to steal.
Max, why are you okay? This is like, what? I don't understand why you wouldn't just be like, I don't think I am doing that. But if someone else was like Iron Horse, I would say it's wrong. Like, why? I don't understand why. Like, the question isn't saying, Max, please let me ask the question isn't saying like, Max, you are doing X. Do you think X is wrong? It's just saying, do you think X is wrong?
Sure.
It's wrong to teach a child that their life is meaningless and doesn't have any real value inherently, right?
No. See?
So it is wrong or not wrong?
You're thinking that it's okay to teach nihilism.
Is it okay to teach? No. Okay, cool. Is it possible? Isn't it consistent that a secularist can actually teach nihilism and still be a secularist?
Yes, but nihilism is not.
Okay, cool.
All of the nuance is lost to you. All of the nuance of the conversation.
Yeah, you wish you can rely on nuance, but the problem here is it's totally consistent under secular humanism to teach a child nihilism.
Yes, sure.
Cool. That's all I needed from you.